Hello and welcome to our free AWS workshop. Before we jump into the workshop, I wanted to take just one moment to explain how the free AWS lab environment works. Now, typically, if you want to play around in AWS, you need to create your AWS account, put in your credit card information, all that jazz. Well, within our Infosec skills platform, we're able to give you access to an AWS environment without having to do any of that, completely for free. So as you're watching this video, you can log into Infosec Skills, create your free account in less than 30 seconds, and follow along with Keatron to learn how to build and deploy cloud services in AWS. Unfortunately, after the end of July, we're going to have to put this into the paid side of Infosec Skills because it does cost us money to run these labs, but it will still be available. You'll just need to upgrade from your free Infosec Skills account to a paid Infosec Skills account to continue accessing it then. One other quick thing, we are going to have a second free AWS workshop towards the end of July. So I encourage you to check out the link in the description to our events page, sign up for that. With that, let's jump into the free workshop. Hello and welcome to this free AWS workshop from Infosec Institute, where we're going to build and deploy AWS cloud infrastructure in less than 60 minutes. My name is Jeff Peters and I'm the Director of Brand and Content Marketing here at Infosec. We have a great interactive workshop planned for today, so let's jump right in and meet our instructor. Very excited to have Keatron Evans back with us for another training session. Keatron, if you don't know him, is an AWS certified generative AI subject matter expert. And if you've watched any of our content with him over the past decade, you've likely heard him talking about the importance of cloud skills in today's IT and cybersecurity pros. He's the VP of Portfolio Product and AI Strategy here at Infosec, where he leads the development of cutting-edge solutions that are redefining cybersecurity education and training. He has over 20 years of experience, bringing a unique blend of expertise as a cybersecurity innovator, instructor, and practitioner. He's also the author of Chained Exploits, Advanced Hacking Attacks from Start to Finish, and a founding member of an AI company that developed offensive cybersecurity tools for U.S. intelligence organizations. Welcome, Keatron.
Thank you for that, Jeff. Appreciate it.
So before I hand it over to Keatron, just a little bit of context for a minute on these workshops. So here at Infosec, we've been doing live certification training boot camps for more than 20 years, trained tens of thousands of cybersecurity professionals through those boot camps. The goal of these workshops that we started this year is to really just give you a slice of the skills that you'll learn in those award-winning multi-day boot camps and our Infosec skills platform. We recently partnered with AWS to provide training for different AWS certifications. And during today's workshop, Keatron is going to cover some of those foundational AWS concepts and skills that are beneficial for a variety of careers. Obviously, we can't cover everything in just an hour. So if you enjoyed today's session and you want to dive more into AWS architecture, AWS operations, security, DevOps, I encourage you to explore those full boot camps. For those live viewers on the call today, this session will be recorded and made available as a free on-demand training. So don't worry if you fall behind during the workshop today. Feel free to put any questions you have in the chat and we'll answer them if we can. However, Keatron's got a lot to cover in this hour, so I want to make sure he has time to get through everything. Last thing before I hand it over to Keatron, here are the steps for accessing the lab environment. If you don't already have an Infosec Skills account, you will be prompted to create a free account. Just takes about 30 seconds. So I encourage you to click on that link now and get into the lab environment if you plan to follow along with Keatron. Otherwise, you're welcome to just watch for the next hour. And as we mentioned, this will be on demand, so you can go back later today, tomorrow, whenever you want to go through that. But with that out of the way, I'm going to throw it over to Keatron and let him get started with this AWS workshop.
So we're going to get into this and just kind of go from beginning to see what it looks like. And, my assumption here is that a lot of you or most of you may have never touched a cloud environment or built anything in a cloud environment or even done anything with cloud, much less AWS or any other, type of service or whatever the case may be. So part of what we're going to be doing here is essentially allowing you to build out an environment, to where you can kind of have your own piece of the cloud world, like kind of carve out your own, cloud environment or whatever the case may be. And then we're going to do something simple, build a website and make that site reachable by anyone. And we'll do that just using, we'll do it using, S3 and some other things. We'll learn about what a VPC is. We'll learn about what a security group is, talk about firewalls a little bit and how to open those up, and kind of get into the process of just getting you used to doing all things cloud and all things AWS. Because kind of what we want to do is get you over some of the fear of like what you might have doing as far as like creating things and playing around in it. Let's talk about how to do some of this stuff safely without running uphill. Now, in this case, we're providing you with an AWS environment. So what that means is you don't have to worry about those things because we've kind of we're giving you a slice of our AWS to build your own AWS in. So these are not things you have to worry about while you're in this lab. But as you expand out and you start to, do some of your own stuff in your own AWS environment, then that cost is going to become a bigger concern. So you're going to want to make sure that at the very least, you consider those things and think about those things as you're building stuff out. Now, as just a general measure of safety, the stuff that we're going to have you doing in here is not going to run your bill up or cost you anything, less than a penny, right? The activity we're going to do today, if you do it, it's going to cost you less than a penny to do it. So that is just for safety's sake. In case somebody is, using this to follow along in their own AWS environment, you're not incurring like any real cost there. It's going to be less than a penny. And that's kind of what we're getting at. Now, I'm going to kind of have you do this from scratch, and we'll kind of walk through it together because I want you to see, what the overall process is and how it actually works. We'll create an auto scaling group, create a load balancer, do all those things and make sure that you get your site set up and make sure you can make it to where people can visit it. So the first thing I think Jeff should have sent out for you a link to get yourself a free skills account. All right. And I'm going to ask you to go ahead and log into that account. And then I'm going to be walking you through how to get set up here. So when you get in there, the first thing you want to do in skills is go to search. And then in search, you just want to type in Keatron's AWS. And if you do that, the first link that you should get back is the one that says Keatron's AWS range. Right. Now, I want to kind of point out some logistics here because there's, over 100 of you. I'm not going to have time to troubleshoot each individual person's hang up if you have a hang up. But what I would ask you to do is remember this is our recorded and you will have at least 30 days access to this lab environment. So what you want to do if you are not able to keep up, because I do have to go at a certain speed to get through it, is you want to essentially just go back and watch it, pause where you need to pause and take your time and go at your pace. Because right now, everybody's going to have to go at my pace, just so that we can get through everything that we need to actually get through. Right? So once you search for that and you find this particular range, we're just going to go into that range. And I want to just point out there's two exercises in here. The first one is the one we're going to be working through. This one is to basically walk you through setting up a cloud environment, setting up an S3 bucket, and eventually setting up a web page. You'll get into configuring a basic load balancer and all that. And then the second one is a CTF or capture the flag that you can do in your own time later, right? Something to keep you going after you get through this particular webinar that we're doing here, right? So we're going to go ahead and start up the first one, getting started with AWS Cloud Fundamentals. It'll pop up this window, and then we're going to hit Open Lab window. And eventually it'll say your lab is ready. and it'll say getting started, and you'll see it pop up eventually with an environment like this. Now, it's going to take you all probably a minute or so for yours to get up. So I'm just going to talk to you about some things while I'm waiting for everyone's environment to come up. Now, AWS is actually an environment that's made up of hundreds and hundreds of services. These services allow you to do everything from store stuff to host entire web pages to everything else you could possibly imagine. You could build entire infrastructures out. You could build just web pages. You can build databases. A lot of the AWS or a lot of the generative AI stuff that we do now, we do it in AWS. You can build a database. You can build training models. You can literally take an entire company's data center and all their computing environment and put all of that into an AWS environment, okay? Now, part of why that's possible is, let me do a little bit of artwork here. Is the way I want you to think about this is I want you to think of Amazon or AWS in this case. Think of it as this massive collection of data centers that are spread out around the world. Think of many, many thousands of data centers that are spread out around the world. And when you think of a data center, you should just think of a big facility that's very well cooled, that's got thousands and thousands of super, super powerful servers and other types of computing equipment in there that's working together to provide environments for you to host your data, put your data in, okay? Amazon probably owns more of that than anybody else in the world. So imagine if we could create a cloud-based application that could logically group all of those data centers and all those resources into something that we can access via a web browser, okay? The AWS console is the application that allows us access to the robust and vast amount of AWS databases, servers, compute equipment, memory equipment, and all the other resources that we can get access to via AWS. That's what this AWS console is, okay? Now, this little blue box that I drew over here, that logically represents the AWS environment. All of their data centers housed under this one big thing that we can access depending on what access we're given, okay? Now, let's say you come along and you want to build a network. In your home or at work, you'd go and buy some routers, some switches, some computers, you'd connect them all up and you'd have a network, right? Then you would go and buy internet service, you'd get the router from the internet service provider, you would connect your network to that router, and now you have internet for your network. Well, the way we do that in AWS is, let's say I want to do that, but I don't want to do it at home. I don't want to buy physical equipment. I would take and ask AWS for a little bit of space. So let's just take this little green box as my space. And then in my little green box, I'm going to build a whole bunch of servers, routers, virtual switches, virtual firewalls, internet gateways, NAT gateways, basically things that allow me to get out to the internet, all right? And if you want to imagine anything outside this big blue box as being the internet, so now I can be at home up here. Let's just call this big green box up here home. I could be at home and then be able to access all of this infrastructure that I built in the AWS environment via the internet through this AWS console. And of course, via permissions, I only get access to my stuff. And then I can configure this stuff so that everybody can get access to it across the internet, i.e. something like a web server, okay? That's what that looks like. So that is what it is. Now, this little piece of network here that Amazon gave me, that's dedicated to me, that I'm building my stuff in, That is called a VPC, which is short for virtual private cloud. Okay. So when you think about cloud environments, specifically AWS, the most fundamental and basic concept is a VPC, because it's your little part of Amazon that they've given you temporarily for you to build out whatever size network you want in. And it's virtually private to just you, right? Now, inside that VPC, you can do whatever you want. You can build 100 other networks inside it, connect them all using gateways, then connect them to the internet using an internet gateway or whatever the case may be. But that is what it is. Now, the beauty of that is as your demands expand or as your needs expand, these things can grow automatically through something called auto scaling, to where you don't have to worry about going out and purchasing new resources, adding more hardware or anything like that. These things can auto scale based on the need and your demand that you're getting from people visiting or using your stuff, and they shrink back down when you don't need that demand. That concept is known as rapid elasticity, and it's one of the 5 founding principles of cloud resources. So out of the 5, I'm only going to really get into that one. You need to remember that one, right? There is a such thing as scaling, which means you can grow really big, but what do you do when you don't have that demand anymore? Going back down, right? That is where the elasticity comes in. Scaling is getting bigger, but elasticity is being able to get big and then small and then big and then small, right? And that is one of the founding principles of what cloud gave us. Okay. So now, with that being the case, let us move on for my amazing artwork here, because that's what I'm actually known for, is art. And we'll look over in the environment, look at the instructions, and kind of start walking through it. Now, again, I'm going through this at a pace that's really designed to just get you comfortable with the environment and kind of get started. But you can go back and pause this in the recording and go at your speed. So it tells us this is a hands-on lab. You're going to be essentially building out some AWS resources. And we may do a part 2 for this, right, to make it enticing and do some really cool stuff. So I'm just going to click next on that. Now you'll see on your console all these things that say access denied. You don't need to worry about that. It's just services that we're not going to be using anyways. And some of those services aren't available depending on the region that you pick and all kinds of other stuff. So in here, we're going to go ahead, and it says in this lab, you will configure and deploy a highly available secure website using AWS. First, we'll configure network security for the environment, and then you will create a S3 bucket to store the asset. Next, you'll create a fleet of instances of EC2 using an auto scaling group. And finally, you integrate into a load balancer into that group. And this is the first part of setting up that website. Now, it says you'll be deploying a newly launched AWS environment. It contains a VPC named Lab VPCA. We know what a VPC is now, okay? So I'm just going to go to next and just follow the instructions here. It says configure your network. And then the way this is set up is it gives you a step-by-step of what you're supposed to do. So as you come over here to the left and do the things, you can check the box here to say you've done that thing so you can keep track of what you're actually doing, right? So it says create a network access control list. In the task list, you will create a network ACL. It says in the AWS console on the navigation bar, ensure that we've selected the region Ohio. So what that's talking about is, remember how I drew that big square box and said it is a virtual or logical access point that allows you access to the hundreds of thousands of AWS data centers around the world? Well, by picking a region, you're basically saying, I only want my stuff to be in a data center in this part of the world, right? In this, if we picked Oregon or US West, it would only be in that western part of the world, the western US part of the world. It tells us to pick Ohio East. So I'm going to go up here to where it says Oregon. And then I'm going to select US East Ohio, because that's what it tells us to do. So what that did is it changed the location. And on my console, it would have changed, like, you know, maybe some of the access denied stuff might have changed, or it may not have. In step 2, it says in the AWS console, we are going to search for services and we're going to search for VPC. What that means is up here at the top left, this is where you access those thousands of services I was talking about. Since we don't want to like get a list of all of them and try to search through manual and find VPCs, we're just going to type up here in the top, search VPC. And you can also copy and paste it from this little copy and paste icon over here. Right. So I'm going to click on VPC. And then for me, it's going to load the VPC services. Right? And now I see all of these services and features that are available for me to build out my little virtual private cloud or my network within Amazon's network, right? So it says, all right, next we're going to, and it gives us a here that you can copy. When you see this little icon with the little stacked windows, it means you can click that and it'll copy into your clipboard, whatever's to the right of it, right? And that will be useful to speed us up later. We're going to go into network ACLs. Right? Now, I know the question is on some folks' mind, why is there already two of these there? Well, the truth of the matter is when you create an AWS account, some things get created automatically for you, just for you to have a container or base container. But we've set up some things in here to monitor and make sure that you're able to do all the stuff that you're supposed to do. So we're just going to go through and do this, right? So under here, I'm going to say create network ACL. I may have to delete one of these here. And then for that ACL name, it says we're going to create one named Web Server ACL. Remember, I can copy that. So I'm just going to copy that by clicking the little windows. And over here where it says name, it's saying to paste that in there. So I'll do that. Then it says select a virtual private cloud or VPC for use with this ACL. We're going to select the one that says Lab VPC A, which is this one that's already created for us. Okay. Now, once we select that, it says in the VPC, select Lab VPC A, and then select Create Network ACL, which is this orange button right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And what we're doing is we're setting up the parameters around our little virtual private cloud. All right, now you can see ours showed up. And since we gave it a name under the name tag, it sticks out with a human readable name. And we're not stuck with just these weird ACL IDs like you see for the others here, right? And that's important. As you build out an infrastructure, you want to make sure you name things something that actually makes sense to you, because when you get hundreds of these in there, you're going to need the logic to be able to look at it and know what it is and what it's for. All right, step 7, it says select the web server ACL checkbox and clear any other checkboxes. So basically it's saying we want to select just this one because this is the one we'll be configuring and working with. And then it says in the detail panes, we want to, on the inbound rules tab, click edit. All right, what is this doing? Well, in the details pane down here, we click on inbound rules. And then it says click edit inbound rules. What this is doing is we're deciding at the network layer what traffic can get into our network, right? So think of this as a layer 3 firewall that we're configuring here, a network-based firewall. So we're saying at layer 3, we only want to allow certain traffic, right? So when we select that, it says select add new rule. I'm going to do that. Then it says in the rule number, enter 100. I'm just going to copy that and paste it. And then it says, notice I'm checking these boxes as I do these things because I want to encourage you to do that, right? Next, it says you want to change the type to HTTP. So we'll do that. And then it says, finally, select add new rule. Again, because we're building two. And then we're going to name this one rule number 200. And for this one, we're going to, in the port range, and then I'm going to save changes. So what we've done is at a very deep level, we've done that no traffic, only traffic can come in, the only traffic that can come into our network right now is traffic coming in on port 80, right? And then the only traffic that can go out is traffic on those port ranges that we specified. So now we're going to look at the outbound rules. And we're basically going to repeat the same thing, right? We're going to select it. We're going to edit the outbound rules. We're going to add a new rule. We're going to name it, give it 100 as its number. And in this case, we're going to say we want to select, let all traffic go out of this network at layer 3. All right. And then it says we want to save those changes. Right. Now, it says on the subnet associations tab, select edit subnet associations. This is right here, subnet associations, edit associations. Okay. It says then select all the available subnets. So we want to select all of these. All right, and then we want to save changes. So now what we've done is we've created a network layer access control list, and we've associated it with our virtual private network that we created inside the lab VPCA. Okay. Now, at the host layer, at the device layer, we want to create another type of rule that allows us to configure rules at the device layer or at the server layer. That is generally done using something called security groups. Okay. So the way that works is we'll go and create that following these steps. So if you can think about your Windows firewall or your firewall on your specific Linux device, this would be kind of what a security group is. And it's basically, it gives you a way to create the rules and apply it to multiple devices as they're spin up without you having to go to each individual device and specify what traffic you want to allow to that device and what you don't. So we're going to follow instructions. It says go to the management console and select security groups. All right, that's right under security over here, like it says. Security groups is right there. Then we're going to select create security group. Now, there's already a couple of default ones created, but we're going to create our own because we know what we want to allow to our devices and what we don't. We're going to name this new security group WebSG. And then for a description, we're going to name it security group for HTTP access. And then for the VPC, we want to make sure we're applying this to our Lab A VPC. So we're going to go and change it to this one, the one that says Lab VPCA. And then on the inbound rules, now we have to actually create rules there. We're going to add a rule We're going to select HTTP. And I'm just following the I'm going by what the instructions say here. So I want you all to know I'm not like doing anything outside of the lab instructions. And then it says in the source field right here, we want it to be anywhere IPv4. Okay. And then in the lower right corner, we're going to say secure. Right? So what we've done now is we've created our own security group for rules that we can apply to any new device that we build. And we can even set it up if we want it as a template so that every device that gets created has this rule automatically applied to it if we wanted to do that. Okay. So now what comes next? So in Amazon, there is a storage facility, object-based storage called S3. You probably heard it referred to as S3 buckets. You should just think of buckets as like folders. These are web accessible folders that Amazon allows you to create so that you can put things in them to allow other people across AWS or even people on the public internet to access things in those buckets, right? That's what S3 is. So in this case, it's going to have us create some S3 buckets, okay? So how do we do that? Well, first step is we go to our AWS console home, which we could just go here. But the bottom line, and this just by clicking the AWS logo up here, it takes you back to where we started in the beginning. And all we're going to do is search up here for S3, right? And then we're going to click on S3 at the top. Now, you could have went to all services, listed them, and then found S3. I find searching to be a little faster. All right, on the S3 homepage, we're going to say create a new bucket. We're going to make this a general purpose bucket. But we want to make sure that we have our region set to Ohio. All right, and we do have that because I set that earlier. Next, it says in the bucket, enter the name bucket number dash Ohio. Going to copy and paste that. Into the bucket name field right here. And if you're having trouble finding where that bucket name field is, I'm just going to draw a big red circle around it temporarily. That is right over here. Right? That's where you put the bucket name. Okay. Now I'm going to continue on. Let's get my annotation off the screen here. And let's paste that name in there. Right? It says, all right, after you put the name in. Now, here's the thing that you have to be careful of. The bucket has to be globally unique. So if I try to create a bucket named Keatron, it may reject it because I've already created a bucket named Keatron. So across the whole AWS ecosystem, your bucket name has to be unique. All right. Now, when I try to do this, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the ownership thing. It says you want to turn on the ACLs. Otherwise, you won't be able to give access to people. Okay. And the rest of this, it says leave the default settings there. And then we're going to say create bucket. All right. So what we've done now is we've created an Amazon S3 bucket, just to review so that your mind is tracking where we are. We started off just by getting ourselves first access to that massive data center cluster that's spread around the world called AWS. So that's what we start off with. First, we got into AWS. Okay. Then we created inside AWS our own little virtual private cloud in our own little corner of AWS. Our little network. Okay. And then within our network, we gave it some rules and some said that we only wanted certain traffic to be allowed into that network and only certain traffic allowed out of that network. Now we're going to create these little containers called buckets. That are in a different service than our virtual private network, a virtual private cloud. These are buckets. And in these buckets, we can store things, right? So that's what we're getting ready to create now. So we create our VPC. This is where we can put all of our virtual machines and stuff that we build. And then now, beside that, we have these buckets that gives us object-based storage that we can store things in that we may want people in the public to be able to access or not. But the point of it is we can give people access to things, to files, to data without giving them access to our network, right? The S3 buckets that you have and the virtual private cloud that you have that you're going to put your machines in and your data center, your databases in are not naturally bound to your S3 buckets. Okay? They're different logical things in this environment and it's different types of storage. Now, the process of creating your actual buckets. It's pretty simple. We created this bucket. It tells us now that we've created it, we want to review the settings. And now we're going to go to the region setting. Let's create the bucket here. Change the setting to West. Because remember, we're East now. We're in Ohio. We're going to change it to West. Oregon, because that's what it says. And what we're doing is we're setting up replication, right? So I want you to think about something. If we create this environment, all right, let's just say this is the US here. And I know that's not really shaped like the US. Well, here, let's undo that. Let me do a better job. Please don't judge me for this attempt to draw the US here. So let's say this is the US. That's Florida, Texas, and all that. Yes, I know this is terrible, but it's roughly accurate, right? So if we have our data center, or if we have our VPC sitting in a data center that's in Ohio, and all of our stuff is sitting there, what happens if there's some type of disaster, whether it be natural disaster or other, that takes out this data center in Ohio or takes out most of the AWS resources in Ohio? Do we want our stuff to become unavailable? Probably not. So for very cheap, almost nothing, almost no additional cost, like some cost, but not much, we can say, you know what, let's do this. Instead of just having our stuff here in Ohio, let's create something called replication. And let's make sure that anything that we have in Ohio there's a copy of it replicated to Oregon. And if you wanted, you could say all the way to the other side of the world. Let's just say to, London, if we wanted to do that, right? So what that means is anytime you create something here, that something's then going to be replicated automatically here and to here. That way, if something happened to your primary site, you still have customers can still access your stuff in other parts of the world because that's how you've replicated it out. Now my US looks like some type of animal or something, man. I'm embarrassed. So I might have overstated my artwork capabilities here, right? So that's what we're doing. We've created the bucket. So now we're going to create replication so that we don't lose our stuff if something happens to that location, right? So now we're going to we've changed to Oregon, and we're going to create another bucket. And guess what? This bucket is going to be very much like the other one. The only difference is going to be the name of it and where it's located because of the region that we picked for it, right? We're going to name this Oregon. Right? And then we want to look at the settings, make sure we did everything we did before. We want to enable the ACLs again. We want to make sure we have all this stuff matching. And then we just want to click Create Bucket. All right. Now we've created the bucket. If we go back to S3 and look at our general purpose buckets, we'll see that we have two. Right? We've successfully created two buckets. Now, just creating them doesn't mean they replicate, right? So if I click next here, it says we're going to enable cross-region replication. So now we have to configure it so that stuff will automatically or can automatically go between the two regions. Now, what I'm giving you here is a lesson in building secure and what we call reliable infrastructure, so that as things happen around the world, your stuff is still accessible, right? So it says go to the console, select the Ohio bucket. So I'm going to select it. Then it says on the properties tab, we're going to go to bucket versioning, and we're going to edit that right here. So this is bucket versioning, and it's telling us to edit. All right. Instead of suspend, we're going to change it to enable. It tells us to do that over here. And then we're going to save those changes. All right. Now, on the management tab, we're going to look at the replication rules. All right, you can see all of this stuff is the way it's supposed, the way we want it to be. So we're going to go to management, look for replication rules, which is right here, and we're going to create replication rule. All right, the name for that rule, we're just going to call it East-West. And I just copied and pasted that. And then in the source bucket, we want to make sure that that's set to Ohio. We can see that it is. Okay. In the source bucket, we are going to make sure the choose a rule scope is apply to all buckets, or apply to all objects in the bucket. And then in destination, we want to ensure that we choose a bucket that is the Oregon bucket, right? And I just hit browse. And then we're choosing the Oregon bucket that we created, because it makes sense, right? I'm just going to say, okay, like enable versioning to the pop-up that comes up there. All right. Because it makes sense, right? Let's think about it. We want, in order for that to happen automatically, like, sure, we could go in and when we create something, we can manually then make sure we copy that to the Oregon bucket, right? But doesn't that defeat the purpose? If you're creating thousands of objects a day, you don't want to have to manually go copy those objects or things or files or videos or whatever it is you're doing over to that other bucket every single time. So this is why we're setting up this automatic cross-region replication, okay? And we're creating redundancy and business continuity and all of that, like, as a matter of just process, okay? It says now in the IAM role, drop down list, select choose from the existing IAMOs, and then select S3 replication for 5254813. Right? So if we do that, we drop down, we want to select this one as it says. We want to review the replication rule. Looks right to us. We can view it right here. Right, like we view it, it shows up in a separate browser tab. Looks great. Okay, so we don't need that. Now once we viewed it, we're satisfied that it's supposed to be what it's supposed to be. Like, we can say save. And then in here, we're going to make sure we say no, do not replicate existing objects. Now, what this means is, like, let's say you forgot to do this step and you create a bucket and you start loading it with stuff. And then you're like, oh, dang it, I forgot to do cross-region replication for redundancy and uptime and all that. So now if you come in here and you do this after the fact, you would want to say, yes, replicate existing objects so that the stuff that's there would get replicated across already. All right. In this case, we don't need to do that because we haven't put anything in there yet. Right. So then it says and we'll be done in just a minute here. Like I said, we're going to do a part 2 for this. In the upper left corner, select S3, return to the management console. So we're going to do that. All right. Review the general purpose buckets. We're just going to click on general purpose buckets. And we can see those 2 buckets are there. It's going to have us select the Ohio bucket. All right. And in here, what I'm getting ready to do is I'm going to upload a file. Now, what you do here is you just on your local computer, create a text file named welcome.txt is what the instructions say. And then you're going to upload that file, right? I've already went to my computer and created a text file named welcome.txt. And in that text file, put the letters that say welcome to the lab bucket, right? Like, I don't need to show you how to do that. You can create a text file. Okay. Once you create that text file, we're simply going to upload it. So I click upload, click add files, and then I'm going to go get my welcome.txt. And bring that thing up. Right. And then it says grade on the objects tab, select upload, add it. We did that. Select the welcome.txt. We uploaded it. Then it says return to your management console and select the S3 bucket again. Ensure that the welcome.txt file is in there. So all it's saying is like, hey, go back after we actually upload this. All right, there we go. It says go back to S3, go back to general purpose buckets, go to Ohio and make sure that welcome.txt is there. And we can see that it's there. All those 3 steps are just checking to make sure the upload happened. Okay. It says, great. Now download this image. So they have an image they've created here named image.jpg. It's just like a forest. Download that. And then we're going to upload that to our S3 bucket as well. Okay. So we're going to upload, get the image.jpg that you downloaded, this forest scene here. And we're going to upload that. So now we have 2 files in our S3 bucket. Okay. And all we're doing is making sure that we were able to do that. So we can see that in our bucket, in our Ohio bucket, that's there. All right. And because of cross-region replication, they're also in our Oregon bucket. Right. So now we can rest assured that if anything happened to the data center in Ohio, let's say someone attacked it or just had a power outage or whatever the case may be, our stuff is still accessible in Oregon. People will still be able to access it. Now, if you did it across the globe, let's say you did it in Asia Pacific, like sure, if suddenly you have a high volume of traffic where people in the United States are visiting the stuff in Ohio, you may see a slowdown in performance if they now have to pull it from Tokyo or something like that. But that's all in load balancing and how much you want to pay on performance and stuff like that. But that is the basics of it. So what we've done is we've created, because what's going to happen, folks, is that welcome.txt, that's going to end up being your actual web page. And it's just going to say, welcome to the Buckets Lab. All right. And we can put that image in there and make that be part of it. But just by putting it in that bucket, you've already essentially built the website. All we have to do now is tell the web service to use that as a default thing to serve out when people visit that IP address. And that'll be in the second half of this. So now, what have we done? We got our own slice of AWS. Now, if you want, one thing you can do for yourself, you can go in and give people, if you wanted, access to that particular file, and they could browse to it today, like right now. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what that will look like. So what I'm going to do, and you don't need to do this in the exercise, you can finish the step-by-steps like kind of on your own, because I've got you through the tough part. But just watch this part. Okay, I can go in here into this bucket, get the welcome.txt and the JPEG. I can go to permissions. It says block all public access. I can change that. And it's going to make me type the word confirm. Because if this is not data that you know for sure you want all the public to have access to, this is actually very dangerous. So it's like making me type the word confirm in there to do it. All right. So then I can look at the specifics of that thing and give people access to it, right? Now, the bucket policy, this is something that we can go in and set up as well. But the bottom line is now you can give people access to these. Go to permissions here. And now I can edit this, for example, the image and say edit. And I could say, I want to give everyone read access only. This is something you want to do for public websites. I could save that change. And now anyone that I gave this URL to right here, if they visited that URL, just get a tab up and show you. So if they visited that specific URL, they would get that image up as a page, right? So even now, if I'm going to put this in chat and Zoom, and I'm going to have you all visit that URL. And what you should be telling me is that you should be able to get the image of the forest. So look in the Zoom chat. You should see the link, click on it. And what you should get is you should get back that actual image. So you can put an HTML page there. You can put the welcome.txt page there. Like we have that thing too, right? So if I went back and did the same to the welcome file, and gave the public read access to it, we would be able to access it as well. So web page, file, video, downloadable PDF, like whatever you wanted to have people access from your infrastructure, they would be able to do that just by you giving them that specific URL now, right? So if I took this one, for example, well, since I formatted it wrong, it looks like junk, but I'm going to give it a URL anyways. But what you'll see is the text file with all of the RTF formatting stuff in there, and you'll see the welcome to the lab bucket text at the bottom of the page there. Right? So here's what it should look like. And then if you look at the other one, let me pull it out of chat myself here. If you look at the other one, it should be this forest. Looks like it's somewhere in the Pacific Northwest because it's evergreens, it's beautiful. It's somewhere I go hike 3 or 4 times a year, and it looks like mountains in the background. All right, so we're going to stop there. Now, I want to point something out. This is just to get you kind of started on your infrastructure, getting intro to it. You can put whatever you want in that bucket, go through the process of permission changes, and people access it. But just be careful that if you put something in there, you want people to access it, right? Or you can go in and control who accesses it. That stuff we'll get into in, let's just say, part 2 of this webinar, okay? So there are some more steps. You can welcome to go and finish these, like configuring it for public access. That's what I just did. But there's all these things that you do to actually give people access and set up load balancers if you want to do that. But that is the gist of it, folks. And hopefully for those of you that have never done anything in AWS, you feel comfortable with that now, because now you kind of get to do it without the risk of breaking anything or giving yourself costs, because we gave you an environment to do it. And I think we'll let you have this environment for the next 30 days or so.
Awesome. Great, Keatron. I know we only have a couple minutes left, so just really quick wrap up with some additional resources. I know we only had an hour today, so if you, as Keatron mentioned, I'll talk to him, see if we want to do a second part to this, so we can cover more of that. But if you want like really more in depth into AWS architecture, operations, DevOps, security, we do partner with AWS. We're authorized training provider for their 4 boot camps there. Those are 3-day boot camps. As I mentioned up top, we've been doing those for about 20 years. So if you're looking for some firsthand experience from students, there's a good chance if you talk to your coworkers or someone in your network, they've probably taken an Infosec boot camp because we've been doing it for so long, trained tens of thousands of people. But Keatron, if you just want to take maybe a minute, just explain a little bit about how the boot camps work. I know you don't necessarily teach our boot camps anymore, but for those who don't know, Keatron was one of our original instructors back with ethical hacking boot camps, 20 years ago, and he's taught them for a while. So what can people expect if they want, more than this hour, they want to sign up for one of those 3-day boot camps?
Yeah, so the cool thing about these boot camps is they're tied to the AWS certifications, but you do hands-on stuff like we just did, right? Like it's really built around the hands-on instead of like having like a million PowerPoint slides where you just talk conceptual. you do a little bit of that, but you do a lot of hands-on, step-by-step guided things like what we just did there. And it's getting you to the point that you can go and take these exams and pass them.
With that, we will go ahead and wrap up. Thank you all for joining us today. If you'd like more information, please reach out to us anytime. Definitely would love your feedback on this workshop. As I mentioned, we're planning future workshops. So if there's other topics that you would like us to cover, feel free to connect with me at Keatron on LinkedIn and send us a message. Special thank you to Keatron for walking us through the AWS platform today, and we hope to see you all in an upcoming training session. Have a great day, everybody.